Hi, everyone. This is Aaron Henney, Artistic Director of Theater Dybbuk. And great for those who have been with us in prior weeks, welcome back. Great to have you with us. And for those who this is your first time joining us, so glad you are here. This is part of Theater Dybbuk's attempt at engaging during this moment. And so what we're doing weekly is doing either talks with me, the Artistic Director, or as we did last week, training sessions with artistic associates and collaborating artists where you can actually train with Theater Dybbuk. So next week we'll probably do some of that and then follow it up with talks from me, etc. So I'm really glad you're here with us. A few things before we really dive into the subject of the week. First, let me introduce Julie Lockhart, who is sitting to my side. Say hi, Julie.
Hi, I'm not actually seeing the slide here.
Oh, strange. I am live on Facebook. We're doing a system check here. Okay. So we are in fact live. Great. So Julie is our marketing director, and she'll be keeping an eye on your comments and questions and making sure that I can answer those in a timely manner. Also, as many of you know, Julie is my wife, so we are quarantined together here, communicating outwardly. So this week, we really wanted to talk about theater in the time of Corona, in the time of COVID, and what it means to make theater, if we can call it that, and do theater in this setting where we are quarantined and socially isolating. And there's been a lot of discussion about this in artistic circles of, what are our responsibilities and what are the questions that arise from doing artistic engagement, especially live performance engagement in this manner. And so I just want to share with you some of the things we've been considering as a company and that I've been considering personally and how we're grappling with these considerations. So first, I want to acknowledge there are kind of what I would call ethical questions on the table. That, theater, part of the reason we do it is a live art where people gather together in space and experience something that is ephemeral, that only exists in that space and time. And it's largely about what happens in the energy between audience and performer. And who knows, I might see somebody I know while I'm on stage, and how does that energetically affect me? And that's going to be different than the next night and the night after that. And so there's an ethical question about doing what we might call theater when the form doesn't allow for that kind of gathering. And some of this speaks to the origins of theater, that, theater was born as a ritual experience that was meant to bring people together in live space to commune with the gods and commune with each other, and to honor the nature of existence by doing something that can only exist in that moment. And of course, we want to honor that origin as theater artists. So one is we're asking questions about what it is to make and do theater in this setting and what is appropriate. Two is there are, of course, practical questions, like what just happened as we started this talk, where Julie wasn't sure if I was live on Facebook, and we're having to navigate the questions of, could the internet crash? Could the system go down? What is it to be on screen instead of fully embodied? As I'm directing in this format, I'm not a film director. We all know TV and film. We all understand that how close you move to the camera, how far the camera is from you matters, but that's not the form I am accustomed to, nor most theater artists are accustomed to. So suddenly there are really practical considerations that also have to do with people being in their own spaces and what's available to them sound and light-wise and all of those things. So for those just joining us, because I know sometimes people join a little way in, I'm Aaron Henney, Artistic Director of Theater Dybbuk, and we're talking about theater in the time of Corona and what it means to create this setting. So again, there are ethical questions, there are practical questions. So I want to talk with you about how we are treating those questions. We actually have an in-process virtual presentation coming up tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Pacific, where we will be sharing some selections from our in-process work, Breaking Protocols, where actors will be in their own homes reading different parts of the piece. And then the evening will go on to have a chat with the team where people can message us and ask questions about the process. And then we will close out the experience with actually a writing workshop where people will have a chance to do their own writing connected to the themes of the piece, which later on we'll invite them to send to us. And our actors will actually read them for people online in a performative way in the coming weeks. And I'm sharing with you that format because that format speaks to some of the things that I was discussing earlier about questions of how do we do and present theater, and is we first wanted to ask intention questions. We were supposed to do this in-process event in person with LA Contemporary Exhibitions. And when this all happened, we thought, do we still do some version of it? And then we asked, well, what were our intentions? And our intentions were a fewfold. One, to try out material in a performance setting of some kind so that we could understand how it's communicated. And also, hi everyone, we're back. The irony of, as we are talking about the nature of presenting online in this form, that I think for only the second time as I was using the system to go live, everything shut down. So there we go, this is it. So where was I? I was talking about intention. I'm gonna pick up right where I left out. So the intention of sharing the work in progress and how that actually could be accomplished in some way. And then the intention of gaining feedback. What are people hearing? What are they receiving? And so by doing, as part of our event on Saturday night, a chance for people to ask questions through the chat. Those questions will tell us what's resonating and what's not. And then the last part of the intention of the original in-person event was around community. This event is being presented, as I said, in collaboration with LA Contemporary Exhibitions and a gallery and art space. And another one is being presented with the Hive at Leechtag Commons, which is a communal gathering space. And so the intention was to have a community experience where people could learn together and hear the stories of each other. So we're doing a version of that by having people write their own stories connected to the themes of the event. I'm pointing this out because had our intention been different, we might have designed a different event or decided not to do one in this form. So that speaks to, I think, some of the ethics and considerations of doing theater in this form. Asking the why and then looking at, is the way we're presenting true to that why, and can it be accomplished? Now, that's also connected to the practical considerations. Because this is an in-process event, we're going to keep it really simple. We're going to treat it like a concert reading. That if you went to the theater, you would see people with music stands, there would be minimal staging. It would be a way of revealing to the audience that we are still in process and figuring this out. So this limited frame we have right here actually allows for an experience that can speak to that in some way, shape, or form. I also want to acknowledge that we are asking questions of how do we remain true to how theater operates, even in this new form in some ways, to the principles underneath. So I said earlier that theater is ephemeral, exists only in that moment. And while there are great, and I don't want to undercut these, there are great people doing great work, whole shows and then playing them later, and that's another way of, I will say for us, in this form, I thought, what if we do it completely live? We're not going to do anything recorded. And what if we agree that after this presentation, that recording, any recording we do for our own archive purposes won't be made publicly available, will not be distributed again. And the reason for that is we want this to be like what a live experience is, which is in the moment, you need to use the restroom or take a pause. You can't pause the experience. You just have to accept that you may miss something or you'll come back in and have to play catch up, just like you would in a live theatrical experience. And also the replaying of it, recognizing that this exists in space and time for whoever is bearing witness. And after that, it goes away. And that's part of the discomfort and the challenge and the beauty of theater. And how can we remain true to that by, in some ways, at least in principle. Julie, I'm just pausing for a second. Any questions, comments? I know we lost the feed, we came back, all of that.
I'm a little sad because my computer won't work live, but my iPad's up.
Okay.
So, but Reggie shared his comment earlier about the rights in the 50s.
Yeah.
Being very present in recorded.
Yeah.
It's being broadcast live on recorded.
Great. So Leslie brought up a comment about live television and, especially in the 50s where it was being broadcast or what they called live to tape, meaning, later on where it would be recorded in front of an audience, but then played back pretty much in its entirety in some form or where it was being broadcast as it was happening. It's a great observation and question. And I think that we might be in a moment, actually a similar moment of navigating the spaces between the way in which what happens here and what happens have to meet. And I think one possible difference is that live TV in the 50s was often done in front of a live studio audience. So it was live theater happening while simultaneously being broadcast, so that you had the charge of that live theatrical experience while also engaging across the country in many forms. And I think that's what's missing here. What's interesting here is we're all in our separate spaces and homes. And what does that do to the experience? That's a slightly different thing than still having a live communal experience that then is being shared with a larger community. Instead, this is kind of an isolated experience that is being shared with a larger community. So not better, worse, just different. And what do we do with that? So I have a few, but before I do anything else, Julie. Great, thank you. So I also want to talk about for a moment this sort of third space. You know, I mentioned at the beginning that theater is ritual, was born out of ritual. And part of what happens in ritual, there's you, there's me, there's the community, and then there's this thing that's created by all of us gathering together and witnessing something. And I'm just asking questions of what is being created right now as we're in our separate homes and people are at home watching in their own separate homes. And then what's happening in the space between? What kind of new liminal ritual space is being created in the in-between where we know other people are engaging in the same activity, but we cannot see them or hear them? What does that do? It's really just a question. I don't have an answer about it. So I also want to share with you about what we are currently doing internally with the company and how we're using this form to honor the company's work and who we are as theater artists, while also recognizing the limitations of the form. So one is that as we develop work, as many of you know, we do script development meetings where we gather together as a company and we read portions of the in-process script, and then we talk about it, what's working, what isn't. Zoom is actually really friendly to this. We can gather together and read and then chat. Is it the same as sitting in space together and maybe having a glass of wine and a snack and doing that in that way? No, but can the basics of what we want to accomplish still be accomplished relatively effectively? Absolutely. So that's really good news. So we're doing those. We also as a company do physical development trainings where we get together and collaborating artists or me or others involved with the company lead training experiences where we actually keep up our chops, you know, as artists. We learn new techniques and we also figure out how we do work together in space. We're doing a version of that. And what that looks like is one of our collaborating artists will lead a learning opportunity, a training connected to voice or connected to movement. And everyone's following that training in their own space. And then we check back in and say, how did it go? What was your experience? We compare notes. So in this way, we're still, again, back to intention, honoring our intention to serve our community, honoring our intention to keep our training up, honoring our intention to move our art forward. We recognize, though, that it's limited. And when we come back together, I'm sure we will all be very happy to have a chance to actually move together in space and time. I see any questions?
Yeah, it sounds like Edith has a comment.
Yeah, our cat in the background. Again, this is, in some ways, it is more live than ever and more in the moment than ever. So just to add one other reflection on all this, you know, I think that we are figuring out as artists how to respect that this is actually a different form than the form in which we are trained and which we primarily operate. And the form in which we primarily operate, we love. We love being with people. We love the danger of that moment. We love seeing the faces side by side with us. And if we can't have that, how can we honor the principles underneath it and the intentions of it without claiming that it's what it once was? And we're considering that as we go on. And I will say, just full transparency, these questions are really on the table for us right now because we don't really know how long this will last. We don't know, even when we can gather back together, in what form, how many people. So we're asking for the coming months, what does it look like? And again, what are our intentions? So do we do what some companies have done? Do we do a show, but if we can only have a small audience in person, do we opt to film and stream that? So that way we have that, in a way, TV experience where you have a live experience with people in space, but it can also be broadcast live. Do we consider extending the development and sharing more bits and pieces in a different way so that people are invited even more into the process? Because that's what this is good for people witnessing process. Do we figure out ways to present things that represent the show, but we acknowledge to everyone it's not the show? And so these are some of the questions on my mind. And for any artists watching this, I guess I would just say that intention keeps guiding our way, asking what are we wanting to accomplish in this setting and how is the form honoring that? Any other questions, comments, anything people want to know about either what we're doing, where we're headed, how we're navigating things?
No.
Okay. Oh, good. I'm glad the beard and the hat are being admired. So the last part of this I will offer is one of responsibility. You know, that I think that because we're a company and we have people we work with in an ongoing manner, there is also a question of what is our responsibility to each other as a community? What does it mean to stay in creative connection, even in this moment where we can't be in connection in space and time? And I also think that's what the arts, especially the theatrical arts, have always been good at, about understanding the nature of collaboration and community and being flexible about what that looks like, and understanding that we can use new forms to find that connection. So for those of you who may be joining us tomorrow night, again, what you're going to see is a reading with actors in their own space and a workshop and a discussion. And I'll encourage you to notice, how are we using this limited form to have it honor what theater does, be live in the moment, questioning, collaborative, while also honoring that it's not exactly live theater, it is something else. And that we are using this little screen to represent something larger without being that larger thing in and of itself. Thanks for your time. Before we call it, any last questions? Great. Our marketing director has just reminded me that I want to remind you, the show tomorrow night, I won't call it the show again, the experience, the in-process presentation. You can go on our Facebook page and there is a link to Eventbrite. You can go to look up Breaking Protocols Virtual In-Process Presentation on Facebook or on Eventbrite, and you can make your way there and you can register. It is a free event, but you do want to register because then you will get the Zoom link that will allow you to attend. It's at 8 p.m. Pacific tomorrow night. It's approximately a 90-minute event, and you will hear things from the piece in process and what we're thinking about the protocols of the Elders of Zion, that anti-Semitic text, what we're thinking about history, and how we're thinking about utilizing theatricality to expose some things in ourselves.
Probably the easiest way to find the event is on our Facebook page, probably on right now.
Great. Easiest way to find the event is on our Facebook page, which you are probably on right now.
Under the event.
Under the event. This is why I'm not a marketing director. Thank you, Julie. So thank you. I hope you are finding during this time ways to stay engaged with entertainment, with arts, with deep investigation. And I guess I'm just going to challenge ourselves as artists as well as audience to consider, how can we respect that we're at home and we might want to pause, but how do we also use the principles of theater to stick with something and see how it plays out and see what that does if we allow ourselves that space and time. All right, thank you so much, and look forward to maybe seeing you tomorrow night, and hopefully in the weeks to come. Take care.